Today's lesson is on comparing and ordering fractions. Students will understand that as the numerator increases and the denominator stays the same, the fraction increases, and that as the numerator stays the same and the denominator increases, the fraction decreases. Let's explore this further. So here we're given two fractions. Let's start by just naming them. So we know that this is 1/4, and we would name this one 3/4. So which fraction is more? Is 3/4 of something always more than 1/4 of something? The answer is yes. So 3/4 is the bigger one. 3/4 of something is, or 3/4 of something is always going to be more than 1/4 of something. Is 3/4 of a meter longer or shorter than 1/4 of a meter? It's longer. Is 3/4 of a dollar more money or less than 1/4 of a dollar? It's more. Is 3/4 of an orange more or less than 1/4 of an orange? It's more. Is 3/4 of a class more or fewer people than 1/4 of a class? It's more. So if you consider fractions of the same whole, no matter what whole you're referring to, 3/4 of the whole is always more than 1/4 of that whole. As a result, mathematicians say that the fraction 3/4 is greater than the fraction of 1/4. Let's just remember back to the symbols of less than and greater than. They're like the mouth of an alligator wanting to eat something. So you always put the bigger side of the mouth towards the greater number. So we can see here that 3/4 is greater than, the big part of the mouth is pointing to the bigger number, 1/4, or we could say 1/4 is less than, the small end of the mouth is pointing to 3/4. The symbol is going to come in handy throughout this lesson. So here we have a picture. Which is more? We have 2/5 or 3/5. Which one's more? Well, we have more shaded in on this side, and the numerator is larger, so 3/5 is larger than 2/5. If we look at this one, we have 2/7 or we have 3/7. Which one is larger? Well, we can tell based on the pictures below given to us, there's more shaded in the 3/7. So we can say 2/7 is less than 3/7, or 3/7 is greater than 2/7. Now, if we look at this one here, we have 5/7 or we have 4/7. Based on the pictures, we can see that 5/7 is larger. There's more shaded squares. And then if we look here, we are now given 4/7 is in the first one. We know this because there's 4 shaded and there's 7 blocks in total. Or we have 6/7, and we know this because there's 6 blocks shaded and 7 blocks in total. We can see based on the pictures that 6/7 is greater than 4/7, or we could say 4/7 is less than 6/7. Now let's look at pies. So we have 1/4 or 2/4. Which one is more? Well, 2/4, oh, sorry, I'm doing that the wrong way. 2/4 is going to be greater than, so we would put our sign this way. Here we have 1/8 or we have 2/8. We can see that the pie on the right is greater, so I'm going to draw my sign with the greater sign pointing this way. And then here we have 1/6 or we have 2/6. Well, there's more pieces shaded in on this pie, so 2/6 is going to be greater. Now, if Sophia gets 1/6 and Tony gets 2/6, who's going to get more of the pie? Well, the pie is put into 6 pieces, so all the pieces are the same size. Sophia gets 1 of the 6 pieces, Tony gets 2. So we know that Tony is obviously going to get more if he's getting 2/6. Now, if Sophia gets 3/6 and Tony gets 2/6, who gets more in this case? Well, now Sophia's getting more because Sophia's getting 3 pieces of that pie and Tony's only getting 2. So here's some questions for you to complete on your whiteboards. You're going to replace that word or with the symbol that goes in between. Is it greater than or less than? Sorry, I'm trying to get this bonus on the page, and there's a bonus for you. So when you're done doing those on your whiteboard, you can resume your screencast and carry on with your lesson. Here's another exercise for you. We have the fractions 2/7, 5/7, 4/7, And we need to order these from least to greatest. So if we want to order these from least to greatest, what is the lowest fraction that we're given here? Well, we know that we can see the lowest numerator is the 2/7. So 2/7 is going to go first. It's the smallest. We're going from least to greatest. I'm going to put a comma in between. The next lowest numerator is this one. So 4/7 would be next. And then we would have 5/7 would be the greatest fraction that we're given. So that's how we would order them from lowest to biggest. Now, here's a bonus that we could try as well. So we could see the denominators are all the exact same. They're all 21, and we're ordering these from least to greatest. So you want to put them from least to greatest. When you're done, resume your screencast. So here we're given another set of fractions. I want you to think of numbers that are between these two numbers now. So you're given two numbers, you're trying to find something that would fall in between. So let's do A and B together. You're going to have several answers that are possible. So if you're given 5/11 and 8/11, what number would fall in between there? Well, an example that could fall in between could be 6/11. That would fall in between. So would 7/11 as well. Now here, for B, you're given 3/12 and 9/12. What would fall in between there? Well, we could say that 5/9 would fall in between there, but so would 4/9, 6/9, 7/9, 8/9, or 12ths, sorry. Let's erase this and go back to what we're actually working on. So 3/12 and 9/12. So something that would fall in between there would be 5/12. The denominators have to stay the same. So we could also say 4/12, 6/12, 7/12, 8/12. They would all fall in between there. Okay. I want you to complete the rest of the examples on your whiteboards and then resume your screencast when you're ready. So here we're given some fraction strips. We're given 1/2, 1/3, and 1/4, and I've already shaded them in for you. Now, do you think that 1/2 is greater than or less than 1/4 based on looking at these strips? Well, we can see that much more of 1/2, there's a bigger fraction here that's shaded. So we would say that 1/2 is greater than 1/4. If you thought of these as pies and you had two different pies, the first pie you cut right in half and you took one piece out and gave it to yourself. If you cut the second pie into quarters and gave one piece to your brother, who would get the bigger piece? Well, you would, because you only cut that first pie into halves. Okay, so now if it's 1/2 a meter greater than or less than 1/4 of a meter, 1/2 is going to be greater than. Is 1/2 an hour greater than or less than 1/4 of an hour? 1/2 an hour is greater than, it's 30 minutes. 1/4 of an hour is only 15. 1/2 a dollar would be 50 cents, or 1/4 of a dollar would be 25. Well, obviously 1/2 a dollar is going to be greater than. If I gave you 1/2 an orange, is that greater than or less than 1/4 of an orange? 1/2 an orange would be greater. So here, what symbol do we use? We would use the larger mouth pointing to the 1/2 side rather than the 1/4 side. So here is 1/2 of stick A longer or shorter than 1/4 of stick B. So this is stick A, this is 1/2 of it. Here's stick B, this is 1/4 of it. So if we look at stick A, is it shorter than 1/4 of stick B? The answer is going to be that stick A is shorter than this. So 1/2 of stick A, because stick A is much shorter. So we're going to look at this example. This one is drawn out a little bit better. We're going to look at these fractions. So here we have 3/4. And we also have 1, 2, 3 eighths. Okay, so we've used this. Both things are the exact same length. That one is divided into eighths, one is divided into fourths. Which one's larger? Well, I want you to first, before you decide this, draw these same fractions, but using circles. So you're going to draw one pie, that's 3/4, and a second pie, that's 3/8, and see which one is greater than. Once you draw your pies, you're going to find that the 3/4 is greater than 3/8. Again, because you're cutting that pie into less amount of pieces. Rather than cutting it into 8 pieces, you're only cutting it into 4. So the pieces are automatically going to be bigger. So is 1/3 of a pie more or less than 1/5 of the same pie? Would you rather have one piece when the pie is cut into 3 pieces or when it's cut into 5 pieces? Which way are you going to get more? If you're like me, you're going to want the bigger piece of pie. So you have 1/3 or you have 1/5. Which one is going to be bigger? Well, the pie that's only cut into 3 is going to have bigger slices than the pie that's cut into 5. If we think of it as the next example is 2/3, so 2/3 of a pie, more or less than 2/5 of the same pie. So we have a pie cut into 3 pieces, a pie cut into 5 pieces. The pie that's cut into 3 is going to have larger pieces. You have 2 of those 3 pieces or 2 of the 5th. This one's obviously going to be larger again. Now, if you get 7 pieces, would you rather the pie be cut into 20 or 30 pieces? So if you have 7 of the 20, or you have 7/30, you would rather the pie only be cut into 20 pieces because then you're going to get bigger pieces of pie. So let's look at this one. You're going to circle the greater fraction in the pair. So which one is larger, 3/7 or 3/8? So it's always important to remember that when you're given two fractions that have the same numerator and denominator, the same numerator, but a different denominator. So here, all these examples you're given have the same numerators, but different denominators. How can you tell which fraction is bigger and why? Well, the same number of pieces gives you more when the pieces are bigger. The numerator tells you the number of pieces of pie. So when the numerator is the same, you look at the denominator. The bigger the denominator, the more pieces that you have to share, and the smaller portion you're going to get. So the bigger denominators give smaller fractions when the numerators are the same. So 3/8 is going to give you smaller pieces than 3/7. So in this case, 3/7 is the greater fraction. Now here in B, we have 11/12 or 11/10. 11/12 pieces are going to be cut smaller because there's more of them. So 11/10 would give you the greater fraction. I want you to complete C or D on your whiteboard. And then there's some bonus here for you as well. When you're done, resume your screencast. So two fractions have the same numerator and different denominators. Which fraction is bigger? It's always going to be the fraction that has the smaller denominator will be bigger. If two fractions have the same denominator and different numerators, which is bigger? It's going to be the fraction with the larger numerator. So when you're asked the question, would you rather have 2/5 of a pie or 1/2 of a pie, you're going to answer that you would rather have 1/2 so that you get the bigger portion of pie. Now you're going to complete your assignment today. Your assignment is only page 145 of Jump Math. When you're done, you're going to check in with your teacher.